Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I was not expecting rain today, but I got a little bit. So here I am on the trail with my hoodie on, and I've got a first impressions to do for you. This is a loaner knife from my buddy Jason. Thank you again, Jason, for trusting me to borrow this knife and giving me the chance to check it out, because this looks on the surface much like a regular PM2. You can probably spot a little difference here if you watch my unboxing. You already know what it is. But this is a little bit different from a regular PM2 because this is from Bladeswelove. And Bladeswelove calls this the PM2 Ultra. Now, what that means is they've taken the same technological idea from the Spyderco Smock, which is a button lock with a kind of reverse compression lock, what would otherwise be a lefty compression lock. And they've used that to make a button lock function. So you might notice from back here, this compression lock moves in the opposite direction that a typical right-handed PM2 would. And because it does that, they're able to put this button on it. And this button presses that compression lock, I don't know if you can see that, and engages or disengages the lock. So what that means is this PM2 does that really easily and in a really fun way. So we've still got a great PM2 D10. This still, like in terms of the way that the action actuates, it still feels much like a PM2. I will say it does feel slightly different, but a lot like a PM2. And of course, the hole, the blade, the shape of the scales, everything is the same here. It's just the lock that's been messed with, enhanced, you might say. So it feels really good to engage. And then to disengage, you literally just press that button down and it drops. And I mean drops. You can hear that ting. It's just gravity working its wonderful magic here. This is crazy. When you hold that button down, it is absolutely free falling. And it feels really, really cool. So Bladeswelove does a few things at the end of the day. They make these scales. This is a smooth G10 white scale, which I think is really cool. They make it in white G10. It's not something you see all the time. I don't believe Spyderco has done any sprints or exclusives or anything with white G10. So you get white G10, which is smooth. It's sanded down and it feels really, really nice. Lately, I've found myself enjoying more and more smooth scale materials, especially on knives with ergos that can support it. If this is a super neutral handle and the knife is like slippery in its shape, then yeah, don't use a slippery material, use something grippy. But a PM2, this thing's not coming out of my hand. The way these ergos work, it's locked in. So I like this G10 material. So they do their scales. They do this full hardware set. So this one is the bronze finish. I believe it's a full titanium hardware set, and it even matches the button, which they've put in here. And they've also done a lanyard hole delete. So if you can see, that's plugged, which I appreciate because I never use a lanyard hole. And I think that looks kind of cool. And then we've got a bronze clip on here. The way that the oils of my hands, and I assume Jason's hands before me, have affected this hardware has made it look a little bit purpley. That happens on bronze hardware from time to time. I don't necessarily hate that though here. I feel like with the white, it kind of looks cool the way that finish is changed. And I assume with a decent cleaning, it'll be right back to the original bronze color that it looked like. But it looks really cool. The aesthetics of this knife are just tweaked enough to make it different. And the feel of it being this smooth G10. I know that they did the smooth, I think it was a crew wear, black G10 PM2. That was an exclusive. I'd never bought one of those. I've never even handled one. So it's not totally out of Spyderco's ballpark to do a smooth G10, but it's rare, especially on the PM2. So this feels nice and different and fresh and just cool at the end of the day. But the great news also is that it still feels very PM2. Like Bladeswelove probably could have done a very similar thing and changed more about the knife. And I like that they left so much still PM2, because this feels, and I mentioned this in my unboxing, it feels like Spyderco made this knife, which they made key components of it, these liners internally and the compression lock itself, are still Spyderco parts. They took a lefty PM2 and they added this stuff to make it work that way, but it still functions and feels Spyderco. This doesn't feel like somebody knocked off a Spyderco in some cheap way. Bladeswelove kept the integrity of the knife true to the PM2 from what I can feel and sense, and yeah, the way this knife came together still feels very PM2. So the way that these come from Bladeswelove, I believe, and I looked on their site last night, I'm almost certain the only blade steel option is S30V. So they take a regular lefty S30V PM2, which makes sense. Spyderco doesn't make lefty PM2s in any other variant that I'm aware of. Pretty sure the only PM2s you can get set up lefty are S30V. So it's a lefty S30V PM2, and yeah, like I said, they change the scales, the clip, the hardware. They add this button, which of course they have to make the hole in that scale for. So all of this is just changed enough to dress it up. Like, I love swapping hardware and stuff anyways. I always put deep carry clips. So this feels like a PM2 that I would own, just plus that little feature that makes it so much fun to play with. I owned a smock for a while, and I really liked the smock. I believe Bladeswelove started doing this when the smock came out because they realized what was actually happening, and they made it just conform to this. Because there's a lefty version, why not? But the smock I owned felt a lot like this, especially because the first thing I did when I got my smock out of the box, flicked it open a couple of times, and then I pulled it apart and I took out the secondary detent, because that secondary detent was only designed to add friction during opening and closing, and I guess to help it stay in the handle better, which this pretty hard to shake out. The smock I could shake out much easier when I pulled that detent out. So if that bothers you, don't do that to your smock. But the way my smock functioned without that secondary detent in there felt so much like this. Just the free droppy, it's banging off the stop pin. It's really cool. So I love that you can get that setup technology, whatever you want to call it, on a PM2, because I loved the smock, really did. I would not mind owning another one. In fact, if another exclusive comes out, I'll probably jump on that, or a Sprint or something. If I can get one in a cooler steel, which Knife Joy did a 20 CV one, but I didn't jump on it. Anyways, if another one comes out in a nice steel, nice handle material, I'll probably own another smock. I really did enjoy that knife. But I like the PM2 better than the smock. Like, if the smock also had a compression lock, I probably wouldn't own one. What made the smock special to me was that it was a button lock. There were other things I liked about it, don't get me wrong. I think the blade shape is cool, I think it looks great, but the ergos were nowhere near as good for my hand as a PM2. The actual usability, I didn't find any better than a PM2. I prefer the PM2 as a knife. I just thought the smock was way more fun to play with. So the fact that you can have that on a PM2 is pretty freaking intriguing. And even though this only comes in S30V, if you really wanted to, actually, you know what? It probably, I assume the blade is actually, yeah, where it's cut for the lock bar is going the opposite direction. I was going to say you could do a blade swap, but now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think that would work, because the way that the lock bar from that compression lock sits into that notch there, it's directional. So this would be a lefty blade as well. Bummer. But S30V is fine. And most smocks are in S30V at the moment anyways, unless you get Sprinter and exclusive. So, I don't know. I guess the way that this knife fits in my opinion, is for guys who have quite a few PM2s and want something different that's just fun and exciting. This is probably the most fun, exciting thing that's happened to the PM2, like as an aftermarket option, period. Or if you're somebody who the compression lock, just the way it typically functions, having to put your finger back here, bothers you for some reason, clearly doesn't for me. Compression lock is essentially my favorite lock type. Then this is a fun, different way to do it. I don't know, maybe this is just more exciting to some people that it exists in this way. It's a cool, different, unique thing. So this probably isn't the most concise first impressions for you, but I will say I've only had this knife I opened up late afternoon yesterday. and I have played with this almost nonstop. It is so much fun to fidget with. So if you're somebody who enjoys fidgeting with knives and you already like fidgeting with PM2s like I do, this is just another level of fun, different, fidgety goodness. This was on the couch with me until I fell asleep last night. So a lot of fun to play with. I'll keep playing with it for about a week. I'm going to do a full review eventually. You'll see before I send this back to Jason, I'm going to give you hopefully some better, more extensive thoughts on it. But so far it's just fun. It's just cool. I like that Bladeswelove does this. I've heard nothing but good things from the people who've owned these. I've known a couple of people who've gotten them so far, but this is my first time experiencing one, playing with it, holding it. That's what she said. So I guess that'll be that. This is my first impressions of the PM2 Ultra from Bladeswelove and Spyderco, kind of. That speaks for itself. It's just, you can't get enough of that when you're playing with it. So much fun. So more to come on this guy. I'll have a full review soon, but that's my first impressions. Thanks for checking it out with me. It is a gorgeous, very cool, very fun PM2.